Welcome back, coin hunters and collectors. Money today, we're looking at 3 Washington quarters that you definitely shouldn't ignore. The 1967 Washington quarter, the 1987p Washington quarter, and the 1997p Washington quarter. At first glance, these coins may look like ordinary quarters, but certain examples can become much more interesting when condition, varieties, errors, and collector demand come into play. In this video, we'll take you through the history and important characteristics of each coin, show you the details you should examine, and discuss their potential 2026 market values. So before you spend that old quarter or toss it into a jar, take a closer look, because the smallest details can sometimes make a major difference in the collector market. Stay with us until the end, because we'll also explain which condition levels and special features can make these Washington quarters stand out. Let's begin the hunt and see what these 3 coins could potentially be worth today. Let's get started. First up, the 1966 Washington quarter with no mint mark, a fascinating coin from one of the most important transition periods in United States coinage. At first glance, this quarter may look like an ordinary circulated coin, especially if it is in good or worn condition. But its historical background, unusual mint mark situation, copper-nickel composition, and the possibility of high-grade examples or major mint errors make the 1966 quarter an interesting coin for collectors. The important thing to understand from the beginning is that most circulated 1966 quarters are not worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Their value normally stays close to face value unless the coin has exceptional preservation, a collectible variety, a significant error, or another unusual characteristic. Current price guides show that ordinary examples can remain around face value, while higher-grade examples can bring premiums. The story of the 1966 quarter begins much earlier, with the introduction of the Washington quarter in 1932. The coin was created to honor George Washington, the first president of the United States. The original design was produced by sculptor John Flanagan, whose portrait of Washington became one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. For decades, Washington quarters were struck in a 90% silver composition. However, by the early 1960s, the rising price of silver created serious problems for the nation's circulating coinage. People began removing silver coins from circulation, and the United States Mint needed a less expensive alternative. This eventually resulted in the transition from traditional silver quarters to copper-nickel-clad quarters. The 1966 Washington quarter belongs directly to this important transition period. One of the most important facts about the 1966 Washington quarter is that it is not a 90% silver quarter, like the Washington quarters dated 1964 and earlier. Beginning in 1965, circulating Washington quarters were produced using copper-nickel-clad construction. Instead of being made almost entirely from silver, the new quarter consisted of outer layers of copper-nickel alloy surrounding a copper core. The 1966 issue therefore represents the new era of American-clad coinage. Its standard specifications include a diameter of approximately 24.3 millimeters and a weight of approximately 5.67 grams. The metal composition is listed as approximately 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel by weight. This means that a normal 1966 quarter should not be valued primarily for silver content. Its collectible value instead depends mainly on condition, rarity, errors, varieties, and collector demand. Now we come to one of the most interesting characteristics of this coin, the missing mint mark. If you examine many modern Washington quarters, you will usually find a small letter indicating the mint where the coin was produced. But the United States Mint temporarily stopped using mint marks on circulating coins during this period. The 1965, 1966, and 1967 Washington quarters were therefore produced without mint marks, even though production involved more than one mint facility. This policy was introduced during the coin shortage and transition to clad coinage, partly to discourage collecting and hoarding. Consequently, the absence of a mint mark on a 1966 quarter is normal, not automatically an error. This is an extremely important point for anyone searching through old coins. The 1966 circulation issue had a substantial production run. Available numismatic references list approximately 821,101,500 circulation-strike 1966 Washington quarters. That is a very large number, and it explains why ordinary circulated examples are still relatively easy to encounter today. Because the mintage was so high, the date itself does not make every 1966 quarter rare. In fact, the large production figure is one reason collectors generally look beyond the date and examine condition, strike quality, surface preservation, and possible errors. There were also special mint set examples from 1966, produced separately from ordinary circulation strikes, and those can have different characteristics and collector interest. When examining your 1966 Washington quarter, begin with the obverse or front side. The central design features the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. Around him are the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust, along with the date 1966. On a heavily circulated coin, some of these details may become weak or worn. On a better preserved example, the lettering and portrait details should remain sharper. Collectors pay close attention to areas such as Washington's cheek, jaw, hair, and the surrounding fields because contact marks and wear can significantly influence the grade. A coin that has survived decades with strong original surfaces and minimal damage can be much more desirable than another 1966 quarter that has been heavily scratched, cleaned, or damaged. The reverse of the coin features the famous eagle design associated with the Washington Quarter series. The eagle spreads its wings beneath the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar, with EPLUIBUSUNUM appearing above. The reverse provides another important area for evaluating condition. Collectors look at the eagle's feathers, lettering, rim, and surrounding fields. On a worn coin, the highest points of the design gradually lose detail. On a sharply struck and well-preserved example, more of those original details remain visible. When evaluating a 1966 quarter, it is important not to judge value simply by looking at whether the coin appears old or shiny. Professional grading considers the overall condition and characteristics of the coin. If your 1966 Washington quarter is described as being in good condition, that generally means it has experienced substantial circulation wear. Many of the finer design details may be weak, and the surfaces can show numerous contact marks, scratches, discoloration, or other signs of circulation. For a normal 1966 quarter in this type of condition, you should not expect a huge premium simply because it is nearly 60 years old. Current references show ordinary circulated examples around face value, with prices increasing as condition improves. One current reference lists the 1966 issue around $0.25 in good through fine grades, while other market guides give similar face value level estimates for circulated examples. The biggest difference between an ordinary 1966 quarter and a collectible example is often condition. A coin that spent decades in circulation will normally have scratches, dull surfaces, and significant wear. But a coin that remained protected from circulation can preserve much more of its original appearance. Collectors may be especially interested in examples with strong luster, sharp details, clean surfaces, and minimal contact marks. Current market references indicate that uncirculated examples can bring premiums above face value. For example, one current guide lists an estimated value of approximately $8.64 or more for an uncirculated MS Plus example, although actual selling prices can vary significantly depending on grade, certification, eye appeal, and market conditions. This is where collectors need to be careful. You may see online videos or advertisements claiming that an ordinary 1966 quarter is automatically worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. That is not a reliable way to value the coin. A normal circulated 1966 quarter is generally not a four-figure coin. However, unusual examples can be substantially more interesting. Major mint errors, exceptional certified grades, unusual striking characteristics, or other recognized varieties can potentially bring much higher prices. Graysheet's current catalog information shows that the broader 1966 Washington quarter category contains examples with values extending into the thousands, but those high figures should not be interpreted as the value of every ordinary 1966 no-mint mark quarter. If you want to search your 1966 quarters for something special, examine the coin carefully for genuine mint errors. Possible errors can include off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, struck-through errors, and other unusual production mistakes. The key is that a genuine mint error must have occurred during the manufacturing process. Damage that happens after a coin leaves the mint, such as scratches, dents, grinding, chemical discoloration, or intentional alteration, is generally not considered a valuable mint error. Major errors can be much more desirable than minor imperfections, but their value depends on the exact error, size and location of the error, condition, authenticity, and collector demand. Another useful inspection point is the edge of the 1966 quarter. Because the coin uses clad construction, the edge can reveal the copper core between the outer copper-nickel layers. This is different from the solid silver composition of older Washington quarters. Look carefully at the reeded edge and observe whether you can see the copper-colored core. The edge alone cannot determine whether a coin is rare, but it can help you identify the basic composition and distinguish this Cladera quarter from older silver issues. If a supposedly ordinary 1966 quarter appears to have an unusual composition, unusual weight, or another physical characteristic that does not match standard specifications, that could justify further examination by an experienced numismatist or professional grading service. There is another category that collectors should know about: special mint set or SMS coins. In 1966, the United States Mint produced special sets for collectors, and these coins can display a different finish and stronger presentation than normal circulation pieces. Current references list approximately 2.2 million plus 1966 SMS quarters, depending on the reference and classification. These pieces should not automatically be confused with ordinary circulation strikes. Their surfaces, strike characteristics, and appearance can help distinguish them. If you believe your 1966 quarter came from an original special mint set and has unusually attractive surfaces, it may deserve closer examination before deciding that your 1966 Washington quarter is rare. Examine it under good lighting and, if possible, with a magnifying glass. First, confirm that the date clearly reads 1966. Next, remember that the lack of a mint mark is normal for this year. Then inspect Washington's portrait, the lettering, the rim, and the reverse eagle. Look for unusual doubling, off-center striking, missing design elements, strange metal characteristics, or other features that appear to be part of the original minting process. Weighing the coin with a precise digital scale can also provide useful information, because the standard weight is approximately 5.67 grams. However, small differences can occur from wear and manufacturing tolerances, so weight alone should never be used to claim that a coin is rare. So what could a 1966 Washington quarter be worth in today's market? For a normal circulated example in good, very good, or fine condition, the realistic value is generally around face value, approximately $0.25, depending on the market and the specific coin. Some higher circulated grades can bring modest premiums, while attractive about uncirculated and mint state examples can be worth more. Current references place ordinary uncirculated examples around the low dollar range, with some certified high-grade examples bringing substantially more. The important point is that the market value rises primarily because of condition and exceptional characteristics, not simply because the coin is from 1966. The 1966 Washington quarter is an excellent example of why coin collecting is about much more than finding an old date. This quarter represents a major change in American coinage, coming shortly after the United States moved away from silver circulating quarters and into the copper-nickel clad era. Its missing mint mark is historically interesting but completely normal for the period. With more than 821 million circulation strikes produced, an ordinary worn example is not automatically rare or valuable. However, a sharply preserved specimen, an unusual special mint set coin, or a genuine major mint error can make the story much more interesting. So if you have a 1966 Washington quarter in your collection, don't throw it away, but don't assume it is worth thousands of dollars simply because it is old. Examine it carefully, protect the original surfaces, avoid cleaning it, and compare its characteristics with reliable numismatic references. And remember, the most exciting part of collecting is often discovering exactly what makes one coin different from the millions of others that look almost the same. Value disclaimer: market values can change with grade, certification, surface condition, strike quality, varieties, mint errors, authenticity, collector demand, and actual auction results. The values mentioned in this video are reference market estimates and should not be treated as guaranteed selling prices. A normal circulated 1966 Washington quarter should not automatically be advertised as worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Exceptional prices generally apply to specific high-grade, certified, rare error, or otherwise special examples. Always verify current price guides and recent auction results before making a buying or selling decision. Next up, the 1987 P Washington quarter, a United States quarter-dollar coin that carries the P mint mark for the Philadelphia Mint. At first glance, this may look like an ordinary 25-cent coin from the 1980s, but collectors know that condition, strike quality, mint errors, varieties, and certification can make a major difference in a coin's desirability. The important point is that not every 1987 P quarter is automatically rare or worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. In fact, More than 582 million 1987p Washington quarters were produced, so the date itself is not considered a major rarity. However, a particularly attractive uncirculated example, an unusual mint error, or an exceptionally high-grade certified coin can still attract collector interest. Current guide information available in 2026 places a typical 1987p quarter at around $11 or more in uncirculated condition, depending on grade and market conditions. To understand this coin properly, we need to go back to the history of the Washington Quarter series. The Washington Quarter was introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The design created by sculptor John Flanagan became one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. The obverse features a portrait of George Washington, while the reverse originally showed an eagle with outstretched wings. By 1987, the quarter had already been part of American everyday life for more than 5 decades. Millions of these coins were produced every year to support commerce, and the quarter was commonly used in vending machines, stores, parking meters, transportation, and everyday purchases. The 1987 issue, therefore, represents an important period in the continuation of one of America's longest-running circulating coin designs. The 1987p Washington Quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and the P Mint mark is the key feature that identifies its production location. Collectors should look on the obverse side, near the lower right area of Washington's portrait, where the mint mark appears. This is an important distinction because 1987 quarters were also produced at Denver and San Francisco. The Philadelphia issue had a reported mintage of 582,499,481 pieces, while the Denver issue had a much larger production of more than 655 million pieces. San Francisco also struck proof examples in much smaller numbers. This production information immediately tells us something important. The 1987p quarter is not rare simply because it carries a P Mint mark. Instead, its potential collector interest depends heavily on condition, quality, errors, varieties, and certification. Another fascinating feature of the 1987p quarter is its composition. Unlike the classic silver Washington quarters produced before 1965, the 1987 quarter was made from a clad composition consisting of a copper core surrounded by layers containing copper and nickel. The reported composition is approximately 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel, with a standard weight of about 5.67 grams and a diameter of approximately 24.3 millimeters. This means that if you find a 1987p quarter, you should not assume that it contains silver simply because it is a Washington quarter. Silver composition applies to much earlier Washington quarters, while the 1987 issue belongs to the modern clad era. These physical specifications can also be useful when checking a questionable coin or investigating whether an unusual example might have a genuine minting error. Now let's talk about the condition that makes your example particularly interesting: uncirculated condition. An uncirculated coin is one that has not experienced the normal circulation where associated with coins that have passed from person to person. However, uncirculated does not automatically mean perfect. Professional grading services can assign different mint state grades based on factors such as surface marks, luster, strike quality, contact marks, and overall eye appeal. A coin that looks brilliant to the naked eye may still receive a lower grade if it has numerous small marks or weakness in the strike. On the other hand, an exceptionally clean, sharply struck 1987p quarter can become much more interesting to collectors who specialize in high-grade modern Washington quarters. One of the most important things to inspect on a 1987p quarter is the overall strike and surface quality. Look closely at Washington's portrait, hair details, cheek, jawline, and the surrounding lettering. On the reverse, examine the eagle, lettering, stars, and the details around the denomination. You are looking for sharp definition rather than soft or poorly formed details. Next, tilt the coin under a light source and watch for its original mint luster. A genuine uncirculated coin may display a pleasing cartwheel effect as the light moves across the surface. Be careful, however, because cleaning can destroy the natural appearance of the coin. A shiny coin is not necessarily a valuable coin, and an artificially polished coin can actually be less desirable to collectors. The mint mark itself is another feature every collector should verify. On a 1987p Washington quarter, the P identifies Philadelphia production. When examining the mint mark, make sure that what you are seeing is actually part of the coin's design rather than damage, discoloration, or a scratch. Magnification can help you inspect the area closely. At the same time, collectors should avoid assuming that every unusual-looking P is a rare variety. Modern machine-made coins can show minor variations and production imperfections that have little additional value. A genuine collectible error generally needs to be authenticated and evaluated based on how the error occurred, how dramatic it is, and how scarce examples of that error are. This brings us to one of the biggest questions. What is the 1987p Washington quarter worth today in 2026? The answer depends heavily on condition. Current reference information lists the typical 1987p Washington quarter at approximately $11 or more in uncirculated mint state condition, while ordinary circulated pieces generally have little premium over their face value. This is a crucial point for anyone making a coin collecting video. A normal 1987p quarter should not be advertised as automatically being worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. High values require exceptional circumstances, such as a remarkable certified grade, a significant and authenticated mint error, or another legitimate numismatic reason. The coin's date and P mint mark alone do not create a four-figure value. So why do some online videos and advertisements claim enormous prices for ordinary-looking coins? The answer is often a misunderstanding between auction records, exceptional specimens, asking prices, and typical market values. One extraordinary coin can sell for a high amount under special circumstances, but that does not mean every coin from the same year is worth the same amount. For example, a regular 1987p quarter in average condition and an exceptionally preserved, professionally certified example may look similar to an inexperienced collector, but have dramatically different market appeal. This is why serious collectors rely on grading, documented sales, reputable price guides, and authentication rather than simply believing a large number shown in a social media post. If you have a 1987p quarter that appears to be in excellent uncirculated condition, the next step is to examine it carefully without damaging it. Never clean the coin with chemicals, metal polish, toothpaste, abrasive materials, or household cleaners. Cleaning can leave scratches, hairlines, unnatural brightness, or other problems that reduce collector appeal. Instead, hold the coin by its edges and use good lighting. A magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe can help you examine the fields and devices for unusual features. Look for strong original luster, minimal contact marks, sharp details, and an attractive overall appearance. If the coin appears truly exceptional, professional grading may be worth considering because certification can provide an independent assessment of its condition. The reverse of the 1987p Washington quarter also deserves careful attention. The design features the eagle and inscriptions associated with the Washington quarter series, and collectors can inspect the fields around the devices for unusual marks or minting characteristics. A legitimate mint error can sometimes be more valuable than a normal example, but the error must be distinguished from damage that happened after the coin left the mint. For instance, scratches, dents, discoloration, flattening, or damage from machinery are not automatically mint errors. A genuine error generally results from something going wrong during the minting process itself. Because modern coins can experience many forms of damage after circulation, authentication is especially important before claiming that an unusual 1987p quarter is extremely valuable. Another important consideration is grade rarity. A coin can have a high mintage and still become interesting at the very highest grades if relatively few examples survive with exceptional surfaces and strike quality. The 1987p quarter had a very large production run, but many examples entered circulation and accumulated contact marks over the decades. Coins preserved from the beginning can therefore be more desirable than ordinary circulated examples. This is one reason collectors sometimes save coins directly from rolls, mint sets, or carefully stored collections. The difference between a normal circulated quarter and a pristine-looking mint state example may be visually significant, even when both coins have exactly the same date and mint mark. When discussing values in the hundreds or thousands of dollars, it is essential to understand that such prices should not be presented as the normal value of a 1987p quarter. A regular uncirculated example is generally a modest value collectible, with current guide information indicating roughly $11 or more depending on grade. Much higher prices would require an exceptional certified grade, a rare and authenticated error, or another special characteristic. Therefore, if you discover a 1987p quarter in your pocket change, don't assume you have found a $1,000 coin simply because it looks shiny. Instead, inspect it carefully and determine exactly what makes it different from the millions of ordinary examples produced. There is also an interesting historical reason why these coins remain worth examining. The 1987 quarter is now almost 4 decades old, and it represents American coinage from the late 1980s. At the time of production, nobody knew exactly which examples would survive in excellent condition for decades. Some coins were spent immediately and accumulated wear, while others were placed into collections and protected. Today, collectors can study these surviving coins to learn about minting technology, production quality, circulation patterns, and the evolution of American coinage. Even when a particular example is not financially rare, it can still be historically interesting and enjoyable to own. For collectors watching this video, I recommend creating a simple inspection checklist for your 1987 Washington quarter. First, confirm the date is 1987. Second, verify the P mint mark. Third, check the surfaces for signs of circulation, cleaning, scratches, or damage. Fourth, examine the strike and luster under good lighting. Fifth, inspect both sides for possible mint errors or unusual characteristics. Finally, compare the coin with reliable references, and if it appears exceptional, consider professional authentication or grading. Remember that condition is not simply about whether a coin looks new. Professional grading involves a detailed assessment of preservation and quality, and a certified grade can be very important when a coin is potentially valuable. And now comes the most important message for today's video. Don't overlook the coin, but don't overvalue it either. The 1987 Washington quarter is a fascinating piece of American history, but its large mintage means the date itself is not a major rarity. With more than 582 million pieces struck at Philadelphia, there are many surviving examples. Still, if your coin is genuinely uncirculated, exceptionally preserved, unusually well struck, or has a legitimate mint error, it may deserve a closer look. Current 2026 reference information places a typical uncirculated example around $11 or more, while special coins can differ depending on their exact characteristics and certified grade. Finally, if you have a 1987 Washington quarter sitting in an old collection, coin jar, drawer, or inherited group of coins, take a few minutes to inspect it before spending it. Check the P mint mark, examine the surfaces, look for original luster, and compare the coin with trustworthy numismatic information. Most examples will remain modest value coins, but the real excitement of collecting comes from discovering exactly what you have rather than assuming every old coin is either worthless or a fortune. If you enjoyed this deep look at the 1987 Washington quarter, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your own 1987 quarter discoveries in the comments. And remember, the market values discussed here are reference estimates, not guaranteed selling prices. Actual value can change with grade, certification, surface condition, varieties, errors, eye appeal, authenticity, and real auction results. Next up, the 1997 Washington quarter. This quarter carries the P mint mark, identifying it as a product of the Philadelphia Mint, and it belongs to the final years of the classic Washington quarter series that ran from 1932 through 1998 before the state quarters era began. At first glance, the 1997 quarter may appear to be an ordinary 25-cent coin, but collectors know that condition, strike quality, surface preservation, errors, varieties, and certification can dramatically affect what a particular example is worth. The important point is that a normal circulated 1997 quarter is generally not a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. However, exceptional examples in very high grades can command substantially more than face value. NGC currently lists the 1997 quarter at roughly $0.30 to $0.85 in circulated grades, while its guide shows substantially higher values for top-condition piece. To understand the 1997 quarter, we first need to understand the history of the Washington quarter itself. The Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The original design was created by sculptor John Flanagan, whose portrait of Washington became one of the most recognizable images on American coinage. The obverse shows Washington facing left, while the reverse originally featured an eagle with outstretched wings. The design remained a major part of American circulating coinage for decades. By 1997, the quarter was already more than 6 decades into its history, and millions of Americans were using Washington quarters every day for purchases, vending machines, parking meters, and ordinary transactions. The 1997 issue, therefore, represents one of the final chapters of the original Washington quarter design, before the dramatic transformation of U.S. quarter collecting brought on by the 50-state quarters program. The particular coin featured in today's discussion is the 1997 P Washington quarter, where the P beneath Washington's portrait identifies Philadelphia as the mint of origin. According to NGC's catalog information, approximately 595,740,000 examples of the 1997 P quarter were produced. That is a very large mintage, and this is one of the most important facts collectors need to understand. A large mintage means that simply owning a 1997 P quarter does not automatically make it rare. Millions of these coins entered circulation, and many remain available today. The potential collectible value comes from the individual coin's condition and characteristics rather than simply from the date and mint mark. A worn example found in ordinary pocket change will generally have little premium, while an unusually well-preserved specimen can become much more interesting to collectors. The 1997 P Washington quarter is a copper-nickel-clad copper coin. NGC lists its standard weight at approximately 5.67 grams, diameter at 24.3 millimeters, and edge as reeded. These physical characteristics are important because they help distinguish an authentic quarter from damaged, altered, or counterfeit pieces. The coin has the familiar silver-colored appearance associated with modern clad quarters, but it is not a 90% silver quarter like many earlier Washington quarters dated 1964 and before. Instead, the outer layers are copper-nickel while the core is copper. When you examine the edge carefully, you can often see the copper-colored center line between the outer layers. This construction became standard for circulating U.S. quarters beginning in 1965, making the 1997 P part of the modern-clad Washington quarter era. The obverse of the 1997 P quarter features the famous portrait of George Washington facing left. Around the portrait are the inscriptions Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date 1997. The Philadelphia mint mark P appears near the lower area of the obverse close to Washington's bust. When examining a 1997 P quarter, collectors should carefully inspect the lettering, date, mint mark, portrait details, and surrounding fields. In a circulated fine-condition example, normal contact with other coins will produce noticeable wear on the highest parts of Washington's portrait and the surrounding lettering. A genuinely high-grade example, however, should retain much sharper detail and cleaner surfaces. Small marks may still exist because modern business strike quarters were produced for circulation rather than specifically for collectors. The reverse carries another iconic element of the traditional Washington quarter design. An American eagle is shown with its wings spread, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America, EPLURBUSUNUM, quarter dollar, and the denomination. The reverse is particularly useful when judging condition, because the eagle's feathers and surrounding fields can reveal how much circulation the coin experienced. On a fine-condition coin, some of the finer feather details will be worn or softened. On an uncirculated coin, much more of the original detail should remain. Collectors should examine both sides rather than concentrating only on the date and mint mark, because damage on either side can significantly influence the overall grade. The user-described fine condition is important because condition is one of the biggest factors in determining a coin's market value. A fine-grade quarter has experienced significant circulation, but the major design elements remain clearly visible. Washington's portrait will show moderate wear, and some of the finer details will have disappeared. The eagle on the reverse will also show wear, particularly on the highest points. This is very different from an MS, or mint state coin, which has not entered normal circulation and should show no wear from circulation. NGC's current guide provides a useful reality check. It places circulated 1997 P Washington quarters in the neighborhood of $0.30 to $0.85, depending on grade. Therefore, if your 1997 P quarter is genuinely fine and has no extraordinary error or variety, it should not normally be advertised as a hundreds or thousands of dollars coin. So if nearly 596 million 1997 P quarters were produced, why would collectors pay more for certain examples? The answer is condition and rarity within condition. Modern coins can be difficult to find in exceptionally high grades because they were manufactured in enormous quantities and often suffered contact marks during production, transportation, bagging, rolling, and circulation. Even coins that were never heavily circulated can develop scratches, hits, spotting, or other imperfections. This is why a coin that looks new to the average person may receive a lower professional grade than expected. NGC's data shows that the 1997p issue has been certified in high grades, and its price guide rises substantially at the upper end. The guide currently lists values reaching around $115 for the highest listed grade in its pricing table, although actual selling prices depend on certification, quality, demand, and the specific marketplace. Now let's discuss the part that most collectors are waiting for. What is the 1997p Washington quarter worth today in 2026? According to NGC's July 2026 information, circulated examples are generally around $0.30 to $0.85, meaning a normal fine-condition coin is usually close to face value rather than being worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. In better grades, the guide increases gradually. Examples around the MS60, MS65 range can move from approximately $1 to $10, while higher grades can become more valuable. The NGC guide lists approximately $20 at MS67 and $115 at MS69 for the 1997p issue. These figures should be treated as guide-level market information, not a guaranteed selling price. A certified coin with exceptional eye appeal or a scarce combination of grade and quality can perform differently at auction. This is where coin videos sometimes create confusion. You may hear claims that a 1997p Washington quarter can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, but collectors need to understand the difference between a normal coin and an exceptional one. The ordinary 1997p quarter in fine condition is not realistically a $1,000 coin based simply on its date and mint mark. A very high-grade certified example may have a meaningful premium, but even the current NGC guide does not support claiming that an ordinary 1997p quarter is automatically worth hundreds or thousands. Exceptional prices would generally require something unusual, such as an important mint error, a recognized variety, an extraordinary grade, or another condition that makes the individual coin substantially different from the millions of normal examples if you have a 1997p quarter. One of the most interesting things to investigate is whether it has a genuine minting error. Possible error categories across modern US coinage can include off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, doubled features, die-related problems, missing or unusual design elements, and other production abnormalities. But collectors should be careful because damage that happens after a coin leaves the mint can look like an error. A quarter that has been squeezed, scratched, chemically altered, or exposed to machinery may show strange shapes that have no collectible premium. The strongest approach is to compare the suspected feature with reliable numismatic references, and when the difference appears significant, consider professional attribution or certification. An unusual-looking coin is not automatically a rare error coin. The P mint mark is another detail that should be checked carefully. On the 1997p quarter, the P identifies Philadelphia, and this helps separate the coin from the 1997D issue produced at Denver. NGC lists the 1997D mintage at $599,680,000, compared with $595,740,000 for the Philadelphia issue. Both are large mintages, so neither should be considered rare merely because of the mint mark. When examining your coin, make sure the date is actually 1997 and that the mint mark has not been altered. Altered mint marks are a serious issue in coin collecting, and professional grading services can help establish authenticity when there is doubt. One of the most fascinating aspects of modern Washington quarter collecting is the competition for high-grade coins. A coin can be common in circulation, but difficult to obtain in an exceptionally high certified grade. NGC has pointed out that large mintages do not necessarily mean that every coin survived in superb condition. This is especially relevant to collectors building registry sets, where the goal may be to obtain the finest examples possible. NGC's auction data for the 1997p quarter shows an average grade around MS66 among the recorded auction population, with an average price around $158 across the available auction data for that category. Auction statistics can vary considerably, however, and they should not be interpreted as the guaranteed value of every 1997p quarter. If you have a 1997p Washington quarter, start your inspection under good lighting. Look at Washington's hair, cheek, jawline, and the open fields around his portrait. Then turn the coin over and study the eagle's feathers, the lettering, and the fields around the design. Check the edge for the normal reeded pattern and the expected copper-colored core. Look for unusual doubling, dramatic off-center striking, missing details, or other features that appear to have originated during manufacture. Avoid cleaning the coin. Cleaning can leave scratches or unnatural surfaces and may reduce collector interest. If the coin appears unusually sharp and nearly flawless, consider having it professionally graded before assuming its value. A professional certification can provide an independent assessment of authenticity and condition. So, what should you remember about the 1997 Washington quarter? This is a historically interesting late-date Washington quarter, with a substantial production of approximately 595.74 million pieces, meaning the ordinary circulated example is generally common and close to face value. For a fine-condition coin like the one discussed here, current guide information suggests a value around the lower circulated range rather than hundreds or thousands of dollars. The real excitement comes when you discover an unusually well-preserved specimen, a legitimate mint error, a recognized variety, or a coin that achieves an exceptional certified grade. NGC's current guide demonstrates how dramatically the value can increase as condition improves, reaching substantially higher levels for elite examples. So before spending or selling your 1997 quarter, take a close look at the date, mint mark, surfaces, strike, and overall condition. Important value disclaimer: coin prices change with grade, certification, appeal, varieties, errors, market demand, and actual auction results. The values discussed here are reference market estimates and are not a guarantee that every 1997 Washington quarter will sell for those amounts. A normal fine condition example should not automatically be described as a hundreds or thousands of dollars coin. Always verify the latest professional price guides and auction results before making a buying or selling decision. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden stories and values behind ordinary American coins, make sure to subscribe, because the next coin in your collection could have a story worth uncovering. Thanks for watching.